Alright, this is going to be a pretty long update video on just the various things that I have planned coming up. So a couple days ago I released a new version of my old Raining Blood black metal cover. I redid the vocals, added bass track, and more importantly I'm using a new drum plugin, and the cover is sort of going to be a test run for that. I always felt like the old drum program that I used had a really weak snare sound, and the cymbals were a bit overpowering. The new plugin is a lot more customizable. I think it's easier to work with. The main downside here is that the kick drum isn't as strong as it was before. It's a lot more subtle, but the snare really does sound a lot better, so I think this is going to improve the overall sound of my music. So this, of course, is going to lead into the new music that I'm working on. With the release of the last album, I can finally say that I'm caught up on working on old music. I'm not writing 2 albums ahead of where I'm recording anymore. So I am working on new music with a little bit of a twist. I'm mostly a black metal musician still. It's my favorite subgenre of music, but I do listen to a lot of other stuff, and occasionally I'll write a riff or a song that's just not really the same as what I've written before. It's not what I would call black metal. And right now I feel like it's the right time to take these non-black metal songs and finish them up. Hopefully I'd like to begin recording this stuff by summer. It's not really radically different material, but the sound is distinct from what I've established over 4 albums with the Apathy project. The material, I'd say it's a little bit more progressive and experimental. There's still going to be a black metal edge to it. The primary influences here are more or less Isan, Tak, In Vain, just progressive black metal bands. These guys happen to be Norwegian. But my goal here is to work on rhythms. I'm not really a natural drummer, and I've basically been scraping by, cycling through the same 5 or 6 simple drum patterns. And I feel like it's a major point of weakness in my music that's going to hold me back when it comes to releasing music in the future. So right now, what I've really been doing is experimenting with things like syncopation, polyrhythms, and just working with new patterns in general. I've also been focusing a lot on drummers at local shows just to see what I can do to expand my palette when it comes to drum patterns. My hope here is that the experience I get working on this material is going to help continue to move forward as a musician rather than getting stuck doing the same thing over and over again. Now, I've been kind of on the fence as to whether or not I want to release this material as a new Apathy album, and I've decided I don't want to do that. Apathy did start off as a solo project for just any of my musical endeavors, but since then it has evolved into a black metal act. I think there's a very tangible direction in where the music is heading, and I'd rather not just throw a curveball by releasing something radically different. I'm not going to explicitly start another solo side project. Instead, my plan is to just release the album under my own name, and to have my own name as this place for me to put out just miscellaneous stuff that I do, like videos or just other covers. I actually have a folder of ideas for black metal covers that I just don't have time to actually work on. But with things like Raining Blood, I'd really rather release it under my own name instead of through Apathy. So I think that's how I'm going to work things in the future. The major change that's going to come from this is the Facebook page. This YouTube channel has always been my personal channel. There's no sort of Apathy official or any sort of second channels for what I do. Everything is just released here. As you can see, all my personal activity, at the end of the day, it's just me talking to a camera. But on Facebook, right now, I'm only running a dedicated page for the Apathy project. What I want to do is change that instead and just have everything under one page for the sake of activity and also just convenience. At the end of the day, the stuff I talk about and the music that I create are connected, so it makes a lot of sense to have everything in one area as opposed to splitting things up. So finally, I want to talk about new videos. While I've been going through the riffs and lyrics on the Apathy demo, I've also been putting together ideas for various things I want to have discussions on, and I have a pretty sizable list right now. One of my favorite things when it comes to analyzing metal music, and just music in general, is the development of music through time, and basically how subgenres form and grow. Not a lot of people, I think, are big into this, but I do have my reasons why I think this is stuff that's worth talking about. On one hand, music, it is what it is. You like it because it sounds good to you. But understanding the reason behind what something is and where it comes from, I think can be very helpful in answering the question, why? I'm being intentionally vague, but it's almost analogous to music theory. Much like how you don't need to know theory to create music, learning it allows us to explain, or at least attempt to explain, why something is the way it is. So for me, as a musician, I wanted to know the concept behind black metal riffs, so that I could basically learn the process and create black metal music for myself. So I studied it, I listened, and I copied famous black metal riffs, I paid attention to how they moved melodies with bass notes to create these two-note harmonies, and the result is the video that I released on how basic the two-note black metal riffs are written. After that, somebody asked me a really good question on tone, and so I tried to figure out why there's a certain aesthetic to black metal music and the guitar tone. And through trial and error, I more or less figured out it's really hard to hear a tremolo-picked riff if you have a lot of bass. So when you're mixing a black metal song and you cut the bass or boost the treble, then you get a sound that's just a lot better, it's a lot clearer, and it's easier to hear what you're trying to convey through your riff. So I got another video after that. So when it comes to subgenres, I don't want to actually talk so much about historical context, mainly because there's already a lot of resources on that. Stuff like Sam Dunn's material, which isn't perfect, but it's a good starting point. I don't just want to rehash the same ideas you'd see from a documentary or a Wikipedia page. Instead, I want to go into detail on things that I don't normally hear people talk about. And what I want to do is focus really on music and how it sounds. Typically, you have a lot of documentaries focus on social aspects, especially with metal, and they usually disregard a lot of musical elements, or they're asking people from within the scene about things that happen to them, stories, rather than their own musical efforts, because you get more interesting stories out of doing that, and you can connect to a more general audience. We always hear about things like church burnings, murders, Satan, but maybe they'll only mention the words tremolo picking blast beats once and not actually explain what those even are. Anyway, it should all make a bit more sense when I actually start producing stuff. I won't really know until it's done. But I've been going on for a while. To wrap things up, I just want to say there's new music coming, and there are going to be a lot of new videos coming.